Ghana Teacher Licensure Exams 2025 Numeracy. We are looking at ratio and proportion. So in this particular test, we have 20 multiple choice questions that has further been broken down into 4 different sections. So the first section, that is section A, covers ratio. So question 1, there are 5 apples and 7 oranges in a basket. What is the ratio of apples to oranges? So basically, when you talk about ratio enables us to compare 2 or more quantities. So in this particular question, since we are being asked to find the ratio of apples to oranges, it also means that we have to compare the number of apples to the number of oranges. So how do we compare them? So their number. We have 5 apples and then 7 oranges. So we have 5:7. That is the ratio of apples to oranges. The right answer is option A. Question 2. There are 4 red pens and 7 blue pens in a bag. We have to find the ratio of blue pens to red pens in the bag. Remember, we said ratio enables us to compare 2 or more quantities. This time, we have to find the ratio of blue pens to red pens. So the order is very, very important. The ratio of blue pens to red pens. So blue pen first, then followed by red pens. Number of blue pens, we have 7. Number of red pens, we have 4. So we have 7:4. The right answer is option B. Question 3. In a small business, 6 of the employees are men and 10 of the employees are women. What is the ratio of women to men? Remember, we have to compare the number of women to the number of men. So let's find out their numbers. So 6 of the employees are men. So 6 are men and 10 are women. So 10 women and 6 men. So the ratio of women to men in the business is 10:6. But remember that ratio can also be expressed as a common fraction. That is 10:6 can also be written as 10/6. And we know that anytime you are working with common fractions, your final answer must always be in the lowest form. So let's reduce 10/6 to the lowest form. So reducing 10/6 to the lowest form, we can simply go by the calculator. So we have 10/6. You press the equal sign. So that gives us 5:3. 5:3. So the right answer is option C. Question 4. Amma is 6 years old and AC is 8 years old. If they shared a few oranges according to their ages, then which of the following shows the ratio of the total number of oranges picked by Amma? So Amma first. Picked by Amma to that of AC. So remember, the oranges was shared according to the ratio of their ages. So let's find out Ama's age. Ama is 6 years old. We also know that AC is 8 years old. So we have 6 is to 8. 6 to 8 can also be expressed as 6 out of 8. And as we said, anytime you are working with common fractions, you must make sure that your final result is in the lowest form. So let's reduce 6 out of 8 to the lowest form. So we have 6 out of 8. We press the equal sign. That gives us 3 out of 4. So we have 3 out of 4. So when you express 3 out of 4 in the ratio form, we have 3 is to 4. We select A as our answer. Question 5. A Red Cross Society in Redeemer GHS has 80 members. Given that 30 of the members are males, we are to express the number of females as the ratio of the number of males. So we are to express the number of females as a ratio of the number of males. So we have number of females is to the number of males. We are comparing, that is ratio. So all that we need now is the number of females and the number of males. So with the males, we are told that 30, we have 30. 30 of the members are males. How do we get the number of females? We know that in total there are 80 members. And out of these 80 members, 30 of them are males. So if 30 of them are males, then the number of females will be 80 minus 30, that is 50. We have 80 members in all. 30 of them are males. So automatically the remaining number becomes the number of females. So 80 minus 30, that is 50. So 50 of the members are females. So this can be expressed as, so we have 50 is to 30. This can be expressed as a common fraction, 50 out of 30. And this can still be reduced to the lowest form. So we have 50 out of 30. So 50 out of 30. So that gives us 5 out of 3. 5 out of 3. But we want our answer in ratio form. So that gives us 5 is to 3. We select C. Next set of questions. Section B, proportional division. So proportional division involves sharing items in a given ratio. Sharing items in a given ratio. So let's begin with the first question. Question 6. Ama and Kofi shared 360 Ghana cedis in the ratio 2:1. How much does Ama receive? So we have Ama is to Kofi. So their ratio we have 2:1. 2 for Ama, 1 for Kofi. Now, one thing about proportional division is that always you need to find out a given ratio that goes with the item given in the question. So with this particular question, the item given here is 360 Ghana cedis. And this 360 Ghana cedis represents the total amount of money that was shared between Ama and Kofi. So if the total amount is 360 cedis, then what ratio corresponds to the total amount? So the ratio that corresponds to the total amount will be the total ratio. Total goes with total ratio. So let's find the total ratio. The total ratio will be the sum of the individual ratio. So Ames ratio plus Kofi's ratio, and this will give us a total ratio of 3. So with this, we can start doing the pairing. The total ratio, which is 3, corresponds to the total amount of money, which is 360 Ghana cedis. So we are halfway through the solution. Now, our main goal here is to find Ames share. Ames share. So if the total ratio, which is 3, is giving us 360 Ghana cedis. Let me repeat that here. If the total ratio, which is 3, is giving us 360 cedis, then Ames ratio, which is 2, must also give us a certain amount of money. So at this point, if less, then more will divide. So we have 2 out of 3 multiplied by 360 Ghana cedis. So let's compute this on the calculator and see our final results. So we have 2 on 3 multiplied by 360 Ghana cedis. So this gives us 240 Ghana cedis. 240 Ghana cedis. That is Ames share. The right answer is option C. Question 7. 2 workers, Ajua and Mensah, are to share a bonus of 2,400 Ghana cedis in the ratio 5:3. How much does Mensah receive? So we have the ratio of Ajua to that of Mensah giving us 5:3. 5 for Ajua, 3 for Mensah. As we said, proportional division involves sharing items in a given ratio. So what item is being shared here? So they are sharing a bonus of 2,400 Ghana cedis. And again, the 2,400 Ghana cedis bonus represents the total bonus to be shared. The total bonus to be shared. So what ratio corresponds to the total bonus? Obviously, that should be the total ratio. So the total ratio goes with the total bonus to be shared. How then do we calculate the total ratio? So the total ratio will be the sum of the individual ratios. Ajua's ratio plus Mensah's ratio, and this will give us 8. So now if the total ratio, which is 8, goes with the total bonus, which is 2,400 Ghana cedis, then Mensah's ratio, giving us 3, must also give us a certain amount of money. So our goal here is to find Mensah's share. So Mensah's share. Mensah's share of the bonus. So as we said, if the total ratio 8 is giving us 2,400 Ghana cedis, then Mensah's ratio, which is 3, must also give us an amount of money in Ghana cedis. So applying proportion, if less, then more will divide. So we have 3 out of 8 multiplied by 2,400. So let's find out 3 out of 8 multiplying 2,400 Ghana cedis. So we have 900 cedis. 900 cedis. So that is Mensa's share of the bonus. So we select A. Question 8. An amount of money is shared between Kofi and Ama in the ratio 3:5. So we have their ratios. Kofi is to Ama. Their ratios, we have 3:5. 3 for Kofi, 5 for Ama. If Ama receives 1,250 Ghana cedis, what is Kofi's share? So always in proportional division question, an item will be given. In this particular question, we are given an amount of money, which is 1,250 cedis. So always find a certain ratio that corresponds to the given item. In this case, the ratio that corresponds to the amount 1,250 cedis. We see that this amount here is for Ama. So that is the amount of money received by Ama. So the amount of money received by Ama goes with Ama's ratio. So this time we know that Ama's ratio is 5. So this 5 should correspond to 1,250 cedis. But what are we looking for? We are looking for Kofi's share. So if Ama's ratio, which is 5, is giving us 1,250 Ghana cedis, then Kofi's ratio, which is 3, must also give us Kofi's share of the money. So we are looking for Kofi's share. So as it has already been established, if Ama's ratio, which is 5, is giving us 1,250 cedis, then Kofi's ratio, which is 3, must also give us an amount of money in Ghana cedis, of which we don't know. So to calculate that, we have Kofi's ratio, which is 3, out of Ama's ratio, which is 5, multiplied by 1,250 cedis. So let's find our answer from the calculator. So we have 3 on 5 multiplying 1,250 cedis. So this gives us 750 Ghana cedis. So this is Kofi's share of the money. The right answer is option C. Question 9. A piece of food is cut into 3 pieces in the ratio 5:4:3. If the length of the shortest piece is 20 centimeters, then how long is the piece of food? So we have a piece of food, and then the piece of food is cut into 3 pieces using the ratio 5:4:3. Now, after cutting down the original length of the piece of food into the 3 pieces, the shortest piece measures 20 centimeters. The shortest piece measures 20 centimeters. So we have to look for the full length of the piece of food. So the question is, what ratio must correspond to the smallest piece? we have to look for a ratio. First of all, let's look for a ratio that corresponds to the length of the shortest piece. So it is clear that the smaller ratio, it is the smaller ratio that corresponds to the shortest piece. We know the smaller ratio as 3. So this 3 here corresponds to 20 centimeters. Now our goal here is to find the full length of the original piece of wood. So again, what ratio corresponds to the full length of the piece of wood? So the full length of the piece of wood will also correspond to the total ratio. That is how it works. So the total ratio will help us find the full length of the original piece of wood. So how then do we calculate the total ratio? So that is the sum of the individual ratios. So 5 plus 4, that is 9. 9 plus 3, we have 12. So if the smallest ratio, which is 3, is giving us the length of the shortest piece, then the total ratio, which is 12, must also correspond to a particular length measured in centimeters. So to calculate that, we have the total ratio, which is 12, divided by 3 multiplied by 20 centimeters. So let's find out. 12 out of 3 multiplied by 20 centimeters. We have 80 centimeters. So that is the full length of the original piece of wood. So we select option B. Question 10. James and Edith shared some oranges in the ratio 7:5. So we have James is to Edith. So the oranges was shared in the ratio 7:5. 7 for James, 5 for Edith in terms of ratio. But after sharing, James had 24 more oranges than Edith. James had 24 more oranges than Edith. What was the total number of oranges shared? So first of all, let's look for a ratio that corresponds to 24 more oranges, or let's say a ratio that corresponds to 24 oranges. So from the given ratio, we see that James' ratio is 7 and then Edith's ratio is 5. So it is clear that James will receive more oranges than Edith. But specifically, James received 24 more oranges than Edith. So what's the meaning of 24 more oranges than Edith? So let's take this particular example. Let's say we have James, we have Edith. And let's say after sharing some oranges, James had 12 of the oranges, Edith had 8 of the oranges. So even from this particular information, we could see that James received more oranges than Edith. But how much more oranges did James receive than Edith? So that is 4. How do you get the 4? By finding the difference. So 12 oranges minus 8 oranges. That gives us 4 oranges. So that is the difference. So again, if James received 24 more oranges than Edith, then it means that when we find, when we find the difference between the number of oranges received by James and that of Edith, that should give us 24. So what ratio must correspond to the 24 oranges? So if the difference in the number of oranges is giving us 24, then also the ratio that corresponds to 24 must be the difference in their ratio. So with the difference in their ratio, that is 7 minus 5. 7 minus 5, and that should give us 2. So it is clear that the ratio 2 must correspond to 24 oranges. So if the ratio 2 is giving us 24 oranges, what ratio must correspond to the total number of oranges? The total number of oranges. So the total number of oranges must correspond to the total ratio. Total ratio. And how do we calculate for the total ratio? That is the sum of the individual ratios. So 7 plus 5, we have 12. 12. So we are almost done. Let's calculate the total number of oranges that was shared. So now, if the ratio 2 corresponds to 24 oranges, then the ratio 12 must also give us some number of oranges. So if more, then less will divide. So we have 12 divided by 2 multiplied by 24 oranges. So let's see from the calculator. 12 on 2 multiplied by 24 oranges. We have 144. So 144 oranges. So we select option D. Okay, so next set of questions, section C, direct proportion. So what then is a direct proportion? So with direct proportion, we are looking at the relationship that exists between two quantities such that as one quantity increases, it causes a corresponding increase in the other quantity, or as one quantity decreases, it causes a decrease in the other quantity. So I will explain that using the first question under section C. So question 11, I read, if 2 kilograms of chicken costs $16, then how much will 5 kilograms of chicken cost? So you could see that we have two main quantities given in the question. Now the first one, we have the mass of a chicken, and the second one, we have the cost of a chicken. So this is what you need to do. You need to find out how the two quantities relate in real life. So in real life, the mass of a chicken and the cost of a chicken, how do they relate? So let's say you go to the market to buy a chicken. You'll see that when they take or when they measure the weight of the chicken and then you get a higher mass, then it means that you must pay a higher cost. So a higher mass comes with a higher cost, and then a lower mass comes with a lower cost. That is how it works. So the higher the mass of the chicken, or the higher the weight of the chicken, then the higher the costs of the chicken. In other words, the lower the weight or mass of the chicken, then the lower the cost of the chicken. So this is direct relationship. As the mass of the chicken increases, your cost also increases. Or as the mass of the chicken decreases, then the cost of the chicken also decreases. So this is a direct proportion. So how then do you solve questions under direct proportion? So first, let's identify the two instances. So for the first instance, we have, so let's say the first instance. So with the first instance, we have 2 kilograms of chicken is to $16. Let's also look for the second instance. Second instance. So with the second instance, we are to find how much a 5 kilogram of chicken will cost. So we have the mass giving us 5 kilograms. So 5 kilograms, what will be the cost? So let's represent the cost as Y. Since we don't know the cost, so let's look for Y. Remember, we said that ratio can also be written as a common fraction. So 2 kilograms is to $16 can be written as 2 kilograms out of $16. So ratio can be expressed as a common fraction. And again, 5 kilogram is to Y dollars can also be expressed as a common fraction. So we have 5 kilograms out of Y dollars. So now, because these two quantities are directly related or they are directly proportional, then it means that the first fraction or the first ratio must be equal to the second ratio. So we just have to equate the two. So that is how we solve questions under direct proportion. Just equate the two. We just equate the two. So I'm doing away with the units. So the first instance, we have 2 out of 60. And this must be equal to 5 out of Y. Since we are looking for Y, what do? We just have to cross multiply. So we cross multiply. So 2 multiplied by Y, we have 2Y. And then 16 multiplied by 5. 16 multiplied by 5, we have 80. So this gives us 80. Since we are looking for Y, we can divide both sides by 2. So the 2 will cancel out, leaving Y as 80 divided by 2. That is 40. So it is clear that a 5 kilogram chicken will cost $40. So we select option C. Question 12. A car travels 120 kilometers in 2 hours. How far will it travel in 5 hours if the car is moving at a constant speed? So let's identify the quantities given in the question. So we have 120 kilometers in 2 hours. So meaning that we have distance and time. So these are the two main quantities given in the question, distance and time. So the first instance, we have 120 kilometers is to 2 hours. Now with the second instance, how far will it travel in 5 hours if the car is moving at a constant speed? So we don't know the distance, how far it will travel. We don't know the distance. So let's represent the distance as D. But then we know the time as 5 hours. So how do these two quantities relate in real life? Distance and time. So we have a car moving at a constant speed. So these two cars are moving at the same speed. So moving at the same speed, you will see that depending on the number of hours you travel, the longer the distance. That is, when you spend more time traveling with the car, then it means that you are going to cover more distance. So longer time goes with longer distance. That is direct relationship. Because the car is moving at a constant speed, the speed in the two instances are the same. So in 2 hours, if the car is able to travel 120 kilometers, then in 5 hours, it means that the same car will cover more distance. So more time, more distance, direct proportion. So because we are looking for the distance, we have to solve for D. Remember, we said that ratio can also be represented as a common fraction. So 120 kilometers is to 2 hours can be written as 120 out of 2. And then D is to 5 hours can also be written as D on 5. Because these two quantities are directly related, then it means that the first ratio must be equal to the second ratio. So we have 120 out of 2 being equal to D out of 5. Since we are looking for D, we can cross multiply. So 120, we have 120 multiplied by 5. 120 multiplied by 5. Let's see the results. So that gives us 600. And then 2 multiplied by D, that is 2D. Because we are looking for D, we can divide both sides by 2. Divide both sides by 2. So the 2 will cancel out. And we know that we'll be left with D on the right. And then 600 divided by 2, that is 300. So we can see that D is equal to 300 kilometers. So we select option A. Question 13. Boss lady's rate of reading is 3 novels per week. How long will it take her to read 24 similar novels? So can we identify the two quantities given in the question? So we have the number of novels as against time. So time, these are the two main quantities given in the questions. Number of novels and then time. So let's look at the first instance. So the first instance, we have 3 novels. We have 3 novels. And the time is per week, that is 1 week. 3 novels in 1 week. Now the second instance, they are asking us how long it will take you to read 24 similar novels. So we have 24 novels. By how long? So we are looking at time. So since we don't know the time it will take her to read 24 similar novels, we can represent the time there as T. So 3 novels per week can be written as 3 on 1. In the second instance, we have 24 novels on T. So remember we said ratio can also be represented in the form of common fraction. So 3 is to 1, 3 on 1. 24 is to T, 24 on T. And we know that this is a direct proportion simply because you could see that all things being equal, if she continues with the same rate, and then if within a week she can read 3 novels, then it means that for 24 novels it will take her a longer time. So more novels, more time. Small novels, less time. So direct, more goes with more, less goes with less. So because they are directly related, the two ratios must be equal. So now how do we solve for t? So we need to cross multiply. Cross multiply. We have 3 multiplied by t, that gives us 3t. And then 1 multiplied by 24, we have 24. Now, because we are looking for t, we divide both sides by 3. So we have t being equal to, so what is 24 on 3? 8. 24 on 3, we have 8. So we can conclude that it will take her 8 weeks to read 24 similar novels. So we select option C. Question 14. A dozen banana costs $20. What is the cost of $48? So first of all, let's try to identify the main quantities given in the question. So we have bananas as against cost of the banana and its cost. So in reality, how does these two quantities relate? Is how do they relate? Number of bananas and the cost. So you could see that as you buy more bananas, the cost of the bananas also increases. On the other hand, when you buy less number of bananas, then your total cost will decrease. So this is a direct proportion. Increase in the number of bananas goes with an increase in its cost, and then a decrease in the number of bananas also represents a decrease in its cost. So that is direct proportion. So let's look at the first situation or the first instance. We have a dozen banana coming at a cost of $20. Remember that dozen represents a set of 12 different items. So we have 12 bananas coming at a cost of $20. Now the second instance, we are to find the cost of 48 bananas. So meaning that the number of bananas here is 48. But then we don't know the cost. So let's represent the cost as C. So 12 bananas is to $20 can be expressed as a common fraction. So that gives 12 out of 20. And then 48 bananas is to C. That can also be written as a common fraction. We have 48 on C. But because these two quantities are directly related, then we just introduce the equal sign. They are directly related, so we just introduce the equal sign. But our goal here is to solve for C. So to do that, we need to cross multiply. So we have 12 multiplied by C. That gives us 12C. And then 20 multiplied by 48. 20 multiplying 48. Okay, that gives 960. Remember, we are looking for C, so we divide both sides by 12, both sides by 12. So these two will cancel out, leaving C is equal to. So let's see. 960 divided by 12. We have 80. 80. So C is 80. So now the cost of 48 bananas will be $80. So we select option B. Question 15. A group of 21 students paid $840 as the entry fee for a magic show. How many students entered the magic show if the total amount paid was $1,680? So first of all, let's identify the two quantities given in the question. So we have some number of students, and then their costs. So these are the two main quantities given in the question: students and then the costs of the entry fee. So again, with the first instance, we have 21 students. Their cost was $840. Now the second instance, we are to find the number of students if the total amount paid was $1,680. So since we don't know the number of students, let's represent the number of students as, let's say, A. So we are looking for the number of students whose cost was $1,680. So we know that 21 student is to $840 can be expressed as a common fraction. So we have 21 out of $840. Now the second instance, we have A students. Their total cost is $1,680. Now in reality, how do these two quantities relate? Number of students and the cost. So it is clear that as the number of students increases, their costs for the magic show will also increase. So large number of students, higher costs. Less number of students, lower costs. This is direct proportion. An increase in one quantity causes a corresponding increase in the other quantity. So because it is a direct proportion, the first ratio must be equal to the second ratio. Now, since we are looking for A, we just have to cross multiply. We just have to cross multiply. So 21 multiplied by 1,680. Let's see. 21 multiplied by 1,680. So this gives us 35,280. 35,280. And this must be equal to 840 multiplied by A. That gives us 840 A. Remember, we are looking for A. So we divide both sides by 840. 840. So 840 will cancel out, leaving A on the right. And let's see. 35280 on 840. So we have 42. 42. So the number of students, that is 42 students. So we select option A. The last section of this particular test, section D, indirect proportion. So what then is an indirect proportion? So with indirect proportion, we are looking at the relationship that exists between two quantities. But then this time, as one quantity increases, it causes a corresponding decrease in the other quantity. Or as one quantity decreases, it causes a corresponding increase in the other quantity. So that is for indirect proportion. So let's say we have two different quantities. So A and then let's say B. With an indirect proportion, this is how they relate. So as one quantity increases, so let's say as quantity A increases, this time it will cause quantity B to decrease. So it's more or less like they are in opposite directions. As this one increases, the other quantity decreases, or as one quantity decreases, it causes a corresponding increase in the other quantity. So let's look at our first example. A cyclist rides 50 kilometers per hour in 6 hours to cover a distance. How long will it take the cyclist to cover the same distance at a speed of 75 kilometers per hour? So first of all, let's identify the quantities given in the question. So we have speed and then time. Speed and time. Speed and time. So the first instance, the speed here was 50 kilometers per hour and the time was 6 hours. Now the second instance, we have to find how long it will take the cyclist to cover the same distance at 75 kilometers per hour. So we have a speed 75 kilometers per hour and we are looking for the time. So let's say T to represent the time. So in reality, so always with these kind of questions, you need to analyze the quantities before you start solving. We've been able to identify our quantities, speed and then time. So let's relate it to reality. How does these two quantities relate, speed and then time? So let's say we have two different vehicles. We have two different vehicles. So vehicle 1 and then vehicle 2. So let's assume they are covering the same distance. So the same distance. But then vehicle 1 is moving at a faster speed and then vehicle 2 is moving at a slower speed. Let's compare their time. So since vehicle 1 is moving at a faster speed, it will take vehicle 1 less time to get to the end point. So they are all moving from this starting point to this point. But vehicle 1 is moving at a faster speed. So because vehicle 1 is moving at a faster speed, it will take vehicle 1 less time to reach its destination. So a higher speed goes with less time. On the other hand, let's say vehicle 2 is moving at a lower speed. or yes, a lower speed. Because it is moving at a lower speed, it will take vehicle 2 much time to get to its destination. So you will see that as the speed of the vehicle increases, the time decreases. On the other hand, as the speed of a vehicle decreases, its time also increases. So this is a clear example of an indirect proportion. So how then do we solve questions under indirect proportion? So let's rewrite this as a common fraction. So 50 kilometers per hour is to 6 hours. That can be written as 50 kilometers per hour over 6 hours. And then the second one, 75 kilometers per hour, and then the unknown time. That can also be written as 75 kilometers per hour on time. But here we have to do something. Once you've been able to identify that those two given quantities are related indirectly, then this is what you need to do. Before you set the equal sign, you need to interchange one of the quantities. So you have to interchange one of the quantities, and it is a matter of choice. You can choose to interchange speed in the two different scenarios, or you can also choose to interchange the time in the two different scenarios. In my case, I prefer interchanging the time. So let's see what happens. So I have 50 on 6, and then 75 on t. So before we introduce the equal sign, we need to interchange. So I said I prefer interchanging the time. So we have to interchange them. Interchange before we start solving. So when we do the interchange, what happens? We have 50. Instead of 6, we bring t. And this must be called, we maintained the speed, so we still have 75. Instead of t, we bring 6. So at this point, we can cross multiply. We can cross multiply. So let's see. 50 multiplied by 6, we have 300. We have 300. And this must be equal to t multiplied by 75. We have 75 t. Since we are looking for t, we divide both sides by 75. Divide both sides by 75. And you see that 75 will cancel out. We have t on the right. So let's see. 300 on 75. We have 4. So the time is 4 hours. So we select option A. So let's do the other way around. Instead of interchanging the time, let's interchange the speed and see whether we will get the same answer. This time we said we are interchanging the speed. We are interchanging the speed. So instead of 50, we have 75, and this must be equal to 50 on the other side. So this time we are maintaining the denominators. So we have 6, we still have t. So when you cross multiply, we have 75 t, and this must be equal to 6 multiplied by 50. 6 multiplied by 50. Let's see. 6 multiplied by 50. That also gives us, I think, 300, I'm sure. 6 multiplied by 50. Yes, that also gives 300. So because we are looking for t, we divide both sides by 75. By 75. So we have t is equal to 300 divided by 75. We had 4. So here will also give us 4 hours. So as I said, it's a matter of choice. You have to decide which of the quantities to interchange. In all cases, you still get the same answer. So that is for question 16. Question 17. A car travels at 100 kilometers per hour in 4 hours to cover a distance. How long will it take the car to cover the same distance moving at a speed of 80 kilometers per hour? So first of all, let's identify the quantities given in the question. So we have speed against time. First instance, we were given the speed as 100 kilometers per hour and then the time as 4 hours. Now the second instance, how long will it take the car to cover the same distance moving at 80 kilometers per hour? So we have our speed 80 kilometers per hour. But then how long? How long talks about time. Time, we have to look for the time. So let's represent the time as t. So now we are going to change these two into common fractions. So the first instance, 100 kilometers per hour on 4 hours. That is for the first one. And the second one, we have 80 kilometers per hour on t. So that is for the two. Now let's ask ourselves how these two quantities relate in real life. So we have speed and then time. We have already established this, that the higher the speed, the less time you consume. So when you move at a faster speed, you spend less time to get to your destination. On the other hand, when you move at a slower speed, it will take more time to get to your destination. So you see that as the speed increases, it causes a decrease in the time. Increase going with decrease. That is indirect proportion. Indirect proportion. So we said that for indirect proportion, before we solve, we have to do some interchange. So let me repeat this: 100 out of 4, and then 80 out of t. We also said that it is a matter of choice. You can decide to interchange the speed, or you can choose to interchange the time. I prefer interchanging the time. So consider when these two were expressed as a common fraction, the time became the denominator. So I'm going to interchange the denominators. So we have a new set of equations. So we have 100. Now instead of 4, because we are interchanging, we have t at the denominator. We still have our 80. Then in place of t, we substitute 4. So at this point, we can cross multiply. So 100 multiplied by 4, we have 400. And then t multiplied by 80, that gives 80t. Since we are looking for t, we divide both sides by 80. both sides by 80. So 80 will cancel out, leaving t on the right. Then we have 400 on 80. So that gives 5. 5. See that the time here will be 5 hours. So that is B. Let's also try interchanging the speed and see the results. So at this point, I'm going to interchange the speeds. So instead of 100, we have 80 on. Okay, so let's do the numerator first. So we have 80. So here becomes 100. I said I am interchanging the speed. So 80 here, 100 here. But we are maintaining the time. So we have 4. We still have t. So since we are looking for t, we have to cross multiply. So 80 times t, that gives 80 t. And then 4 multiplied by 100, we still have 400. When you divide both sides by 80, 80 will cancel out. We have t is equal to 400 divided by 80. And that also gives 5 hours. So the right answer is still option B. Question 18. If 8 pumps can fill a swimming pool in 5 hours, then how long will it take 4 pumps to fill the swimming pool, assuming the pumps work at the same rate? So first of all, let's identify the quantities given in the question. So we have number of pumps and then time, number of pumps and time. Now the first instance, we have 8 pumps taking 5 hours to fill a swimming pool. Now the second instance, we have 4 pumps. Then we have to calculate how long it will take to fill the swimming pool. So let's represent time as t. So let's change them into common fraction. So for the first instance, we have 8 pumps on 5 hours. Now the second instance, we have 4 pumps, but the time here is t. So we have an equation. So now what kind of relationship exists between the number of pumps and the time it takes to fill the swimming pool in real life? So you could see that in a situation whereby we use many pumps to fill the swimming pool, and remember we are assuming that all the pumps are working at the same rate. So that is all things being equal, they are all working at the same rate. So there is no bias. So in a situation whereby we increase the number of pumps, what happens to the time? We'll see that it will take less time to fill the swimming pool. On the other hand, when we use fewer number of pumps, we'll see that it will take a longer period of time to fill the swimming pool. So it is clear that as the number of pumps increases, the time it takes to fill the swimming pool decreases. So as the number of pumps increases, the time decreases. So what kind of relationship exists between the two quantities? So this is an indirect proportion. Indirect. proportion. And once we identify that it is an indirect proportion, before we can solve for t, we need to do something as we have been doing in the previous example. So let me repeat this. So we have 8 on 5 being equal to 4 on t. So since this is an indirect proportion, we need to interchange one of the quantities. We can choose to we can choose to interchange either the number of pumps or the time. So in my case, I am interchanging the time. So we have 8 being equal to 4. So that is for the numerators. But for the denominators, since we are interchanging, we have t on the left and then 5 on the right. Our goal here is to solve for t. So we cross multiply. When you cross multiply, we know that 8 times 5, that is 40. And then t times 4, we have 40. Since we are looking for t, we divide both sides by 4. So the 4 will cancel out. We have t on the right, and then 40 divided by 4, that gives us 10. So the time here will be 10 hours. So the right answer is option A. So let's analyze and see whether it makes sense. We'll see that for 8 pumps, it took 5 hours. But then when the number of pumps was reduced, we see that the time has increased to 10 hours. So it makes sense. Question 19. 10 pumps are required to fill a tank in 8 hours. How long will it take to fill the tank if 6 pumps are switched off? So first of all, we need to identify the quantities. And again, we have some number of pumps and then the time it takes to fill a tank. So the first instance, let's see, we have 10 pumps using 8 hours. That is for the first instance. Now the second, how long will it take to fill the tank if 6 pumps are switched off? 6 pumps are switched off. So what do we do? Initially, the number of pumps were 10, so 10 pumps were working. Now 6 of the pumps has been switched off. So in other words, 6 pumps are not working. So what will be the remaining pumps? So the remaining pumps will be 4. So this time we have 4 pumps. And then we are to look for how long it will take. That is, we are to look for time. So let's represent time as t. So we are going to change them into common fraction. So the first instance, we have 10 pumps on 8 hours. And then the second instance, we have 4 pumps on, we don't know the time. So we have our equation. So let me repeat this. 10 pumps 8 hours being equal to 4 pumps and then an unknown time t. So you need to ask yourself, what kind of relationship exists between these two quantities, number of pumps and then time? So we know that as the number of pumps increases, it will take lesser time to fill the tank. On the other hand, as the number of pumps decreases, it will take a longer time to fill the tank. So as the number of pumps increases, causes a decrease in time. So this is an indirect proportion. So once we've been able to identify that there is an indirect proportion, then before we cross multiply, we need to interchange one of the quantities. So I prefer interchanging time. So we have to interchange. So I'm interchanging the time. So after interchanging, I can then do the cross multiplication. So let's interchange. We have 10 for the numerator. We have 4 for the numerator. But for the denominator, since we are interchanging, we have t here, and then we have 8. So we can now cross multiply. 10 multiplied by 8, that gives 80. 4 multiplied by t, we have 40. Because we are looking for t, we divide both sides by 4. So 4 will cancel out. We have t on the right, and then 80 divided by 4, that is 20. So we could see that the time here will be 20 hours. So we select option D. Question 20. This is the last question under this particular test. If 12 men can clear a piece of land in 8 days, then how many days will it take 16 men to clear the same piece of land, working at the same rate? So first of all, we need to identify the quantities given in the question. So we have some number of men working for some number of days. So the first instance, we have 12 men working for 8 days. Now the second instance, we have 16 men, but then we don't know the number of days. So let's represent the number of days as t. So let's change the ratio into common fraction. So 12 men is to 8 days. That gives 12 men on 8 days. And the second scenario, we have 16 men on d. So we introduce the equal sign. So now let's find out how these two quantities relate in real life. Number of men, number of days. So let's say you have a plot of land, and then you want to employ the services of some laborers to work on it. So we are looking at two different instances. The first one, you are trying to, or let's say you plan to employ 20 laborers. And the second scenario, you plan to employ 10 laborers. Let's focus on the number of days. What happens to the number of days? We see that once you employ 20 men, comparing that to 10 men, we see that it will take 20 men fewer days to finish clearing the piece of land than the 10 men. So as the number of men increases, or as you employ the services of more men, then the number of days will decrease. So once an increase in one quantity causes a decrease in the other quantity, this is an indirect proportion. So once this is an indirect proportion, then we know how to solve for D. So we have 12 on 8 being equal to 16 on D. So we need to interchange one of the quantities. So I prefer interchanging the number of days. So I'm interchanging this. Interchange. So now we have 12, we have 16. We are only interchanging the denominators. So in place of 8, we have D. In place of D, we have 8. So now we can cross multiply. So we have 12 multiplied by 8. That gives 96. So we have 96, and this must be equal to 16D. Since we are looking for D, we divide both sides by 16. 60. So 16 will cancel out. We have D on the right, and then 96 on 16. Let's see. We have 6. We have 6. So it is clear that D is equal to 6. So we are looking at 6 days. We select option B. So that is for this particular tutorials. Thank you.